Hello there. Welcome to Amplified. I'm Elaine Walsh-McGrath, and this show is for established business owners who are ready to step into their full visibility potential, just like you are. You've done the hard work building your expertise. Now let's amplify it strategically so that the opportunities that you deserve start showing up. And indeed, today I am so delighted to talk to the fabulously talented Jo Loly. She is the managing director of Calm Connections, and she's going to share with me how she went from offering training in a local small city to working with a global organization with more than 20,000 employees. And there might be some little stories about working with Formula One. Juicy. So I can't wait to start grilling Jo on Amplified with Elaine. So let's dive in. Jo, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for inviting me. So
Oh.
exciting to talk to you.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. So let's start by giving our listeners, our viewers, a bit of context about your business. Tell me about your business. Like what gets you the most excited about the work that you do?
So I provide mental health awareness training. I'm a qualified mental health first aid instructor. But what I also do is I provide training in mental health resilience, stress resilience, grief awareness. I basically give people tools to build their own resilience, be it with any aspects of mental health. So whether it's to deal better with stress, anxiety, depression, or even coping strategies on how to learn with but more understanding on how to support others, really. So what gets me most excited, if I was to say to you literally in the last week, and one of them being this very morning, I've had a couple of people come up to me and say how being on one of my training days has changed their lives. Now, how many of us can say about training days changing their lives? And one of them came on one of my courses. It was probably a couple of years ago. And she was saying that she still does some of those things that I taught her now. And she's like, not only is it giving her some time back, because she was one of those who always had to have things just so, very perfectionist. And she's like, I literally don't worry about some of those things. It's just giving me that freedom. She was literally like, it has, without being over dramatic, she was like, it's changed my life. That's what makes a difference for me because, to be fair, life's hard enough. And if we put those extra pressures on us when there's so much out there already that gives us pressures, you just switch the TV on and see the news, let alone all the internal pressures we put on us. If we just listen to ourselves and take some of that stress off ourselves and learn some coping strategies or even little steps that we can do every day to build up our own resilience, people do find that actually the small steps do lead to greater understanding. And actually, we find that we can cope so much easier with some of the big things that life throws at us. So, yeah, that's what gives me joy. And actually, just one of the NHS's 5 steps to well-being is about giving. And when you give people stuff like that, it's really rewarding. It makes you feel good.
Oh, fantastic. Um, so you worked for the NHS and then you went out on your own with Calming Connections. But I love that you have that depth of knowledge, and I like that you can draw on like you just did. So going from the NHS where you go to work and you are paid and your patients arrive to you, to then working locally in your local area, to then working with a Formula One team and to secure a global contract as you have, like how did you do that? There was probably a moment when you decided, okay, I'm going to do that, or that you decided I need to be more visible in my industry? Like how did that happen? What sparked that need to become more visible?
I think initially it kind of crept up slowly at first. Um, I'm health orientated, nearly 30 years working in health. I had no idea about business whatsoever. I could tell you an awful lot about the human body. Um, and I love the human body. It's we are so clever what we can do. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm not just saying it because it's you, Elaine, but I went on a women in business networking group and I met you, Elaine, and it was you, honestly. And I came on one of your courses, and you're the one that helped me become more visible. And I remember listening to you, and you are so dynamic, and you are, and honestly. And and when I was listening to you, you were talking about LinkedIn and presence, and I thought, actually, that is literally what I need to do. Because when you think about it, as much as I knew what I was doing had real value, and I know it, I don't need scientists to tell me that. When you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Plus, I've lived through it myself, and I know a lot of these techniques work. I know how much more productive we are when we feel better, whether it's physical health or mental health. When you are well, you perform well, we turn up better. But I needed a platform from which to tell people that. And I didn't know what platform to use or even how to even start going about it until I went to that networking and you spoke. And I thought, that's what I need. And that was the turning point for me. And then I came and signed up to one of your courses. And I'm not just saying that. And that's why I didn't tell you that's what my thing was, because I thought it was meeting you. And that's what changed it. And I learned such a lot from that. And those tools you gave me, I'm still using. And I will continue to use because that is the best way. And also, it's about telling your story. And that's what people want to hear, you know. And actually, even yesterday, I was teaching yesterday, and I was saying to people, as much as you can have all the qualifications in the world, and you can listen to all these scientists, and I listen to an awful lot of podcasts, I read a lot of books, but actually listening to people's stories who've had real life experiences, I think that has so much more value. And I think that's one of the things you taught me as well is to tell people your story. And that's worth so much more, I think.
It's so true, isn't it? My next question was going to be, what's been your most successful approach for getting your expertise noticed? But before I pose it to you, you're right. You're right. I'm pretty sure you're going to say telling my story because
Yeah.
people understand stories. Stories have been the bread and butter of how we communicate complicated thought from the beginning of time. When people couldn't read, they used pictures to explain things, and but it was all built about a story. Like in Ireland, we have a tradition of oral storytelling, and yeah, I think it's underestimated sometimes because people think, who wants to hear about me,
Yeah. Yeah.
But for someone to actually buy into you um and understand, oh, okay, Joe understands grief. Okay, Joe understands mental health training. Like these are the insights she has. Yeah, you need to tell your story, don't you?
And people can relate to it more because they'd be like, actually, I get that because I was there myself, they understand it more. You can be baffled by science, and I can talk to you about science as well because I've learned the science because actually, if you're going to teach something, you do need to know the full depth of it. And that's also how I learn. I like to understand the full depth of it because I love learning, as you may well know. Um, I like to fully understand it, but to teach it, you don't have to have all that. I don't need to give you all that. But I think if I could say to somebody, look, I've been there. I know what it's like to feel like this, and this is how it can work. Because otherwise, people can say, "Oh, yeah, it's easy for you to say that," but what do you know? But if you can say to people, I've tried this, it's tried and tested. This is how it's worked. Or even I sometimes say to people, if this doesn't work for you, then okay. However, there's so much else out there. It gives people hope as well. But I find, if you tell stories or tell, scenarios, whatever way you look at it, or videos, like I said, like pictures, we're all different type of learners as well. And that's how people pick up on things. No one really wants to scroll through a whole long list of facts. But actually, we can relate stories. As you said, we've been telling our children stories since they were babies, even when they're lying in bed. It's something we're familiar with. So that to me is the best way. I can often, and I will do, give facts because it validates some of the information we give. Because it just says, I'm telling you this, and the reason I'm saying it is actually because some of it is backed by research because it does validate some of what you say. So I'm not just spouting it because I think, oh, I'm telling you this because this is what I believe. But actually, research says this. And everything we do in medicine, nothing comes through until it's gone through all this research beforehand.
Mhm.
And that's how I've lived the last 30 years. Everything's evidence based. That's my practice as being. So I will go through that first. But actually, I always find that's the most relatable way to get information across.
Yeah. Well, I always say that people buy with the heart and then
Mm.
they justify with the head. So
Yeah.
you're right. Exactly what you just said. The story appeals to the heart and helps get you noticed because someone stops and goes, "Oh, I feel seen." And then the head then reads your evidence-based information and goes, "Yeah, okay, this makes sense." Um, how have you like stayed authentic through your process of going from a local business, and no doubt you still support local businesses, but to a more having a more global presence, to to changing your whole career? How have you been like, okay, well, I'm still Joe at the core, while you've been building this new business?
I suppose because still keep very much to my values, um, because that is literally at the heart of everything I do. Again, I was talking about this yesterday, so I'm a very caring person, hence why I went into the NHS. For anyone who's ever worked in the NHS, you don't do it for the money. And that's why I've gone into mental health from, I was in diagnostics before, so into this because I want to make a difference. So that's when I looked into transitioning. And actually, when you look at workplace statistics, the biggest cause of sickness in the workplace is stress and mental health conditions. So I think I'm not going into people and saying, I can fix everything. I'm going to, but what I am doing is I'm going in there to say to people, I can help support you and give you some tools to put you through. But what I'm doing is I'm staying true to my values. And I've always stayed true to my values. I don't always get it right. And I still have bad days. I'm not saying, oh, I'm perfect. I'm happy every single day because I do this. I do cold plunges and I go for exercise. Some days I don't exercise, and I don't always eat healthy. I mean, I posted a video the other day showing my healthy drawer, and I've got a drawer full of sweets and chocolate. No, because I am a human being. I have good days and bad days, and I will say that as well. So I always remain true. I give the real truth because that's life, With our physical health, we have good days and bad days. So I'm always saying, if we're to be authentic, you've got to remember your values. And I think that's what also makes me that little bit different. So with regards to the organization that I now work with, the lady who's the CEO of that company, she had seen me on Instagram and was following me. And so she already knew a bit about me already. And then I just took a leap and reached out to her and said, "Oh, would you be interested in some training?" And she was like, "Actually, yes, I would." But she'd already realized that she liked what I did. And I think part of that was because I was just very real and, I was open and honest the whole time. And I've always stayed that way. And even when I first met her, I was like, "Oh, I thought you'd be really scary." I've never hidden anything or pretended to be something I'm not, because actually that's really hard. You can't put on this persona of being something different, because actually that's a lie. And if you want to live a lie, that takes a lot of effort. So, if you really want to be authentic, you've just got to be yourself all the time, because people will see through it. And at the end of the day, the brand is yourself. And that's what people are buying into. So you've got to be yourself, because otherwise it's not real, is it?
And
But
I think, what is wonderful is that, you're testament to what I feel is like an evolving global perception of professionalism. Being authentic, it's so important. You've worked with your local community, giving sponsored training, but also you've worked with Rolls-Royce. Who else have you worked with?
I worked with the military as well. So yes, I was able to go and do some work with a Formula One company, which was like a real pinch me moment. I loved it. I've worked with building companies as well, which has been great. Veterans. So yeah, so I work now with Constellation Automotive Group. So their brands include Cinch, We Buy Any Car, British Car Auctions as well. So I've worked with so many different industries, manufacturing industries as well. So it's been really varied. And,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent, the issues are all the same. It doesn't matter where you work. You could have the best work in the world as well. But, you find the issues are often the same. But what I always say is, I'm going into workplaces, but I'm not saying workplaces are the problem. A lot of the time, people bring the issues into work with them. We're not going in and saying, "Oh, it's all work related." It's not. We carry so much with us already. So, but it's just that's where I can grab people.
Yeah, so true. And especially because these days, thankfully, we're not seen to have to leave things at the door because anyway, people weren't. So it doesn't matter. Okay, gosh, like that's some client list, Joe. How would you advise somebody? Like, so you've gone on the journey from I will actually never forget you but I didn't know that that's what inspired you when you saw my LinkedIn presentation at Wibbon. I knew our connection was Wibbon, but then I remember you sending me a visual that you wanted, and you were like, "Can you help me do this on Canva?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure," because it's easy. But then when I met you, I was like, "This girl doesn't need this woman." I beg your pardon. This girl, I'm so Irish. This woman doesn't need help with Canva for God's sake. She doesn't need another thing to learn. You're so talented, like there's so many other ways of communicating. You didn't need to learn something else. I was like, just get somebody else to do that for you. Um, so what, like from your perspective, having gone on the journey to where you are now, how would you say to somebody, no matter what stage they're at in terms of their career, someone who, like a lot of times what I see is the people that I work with, so this is my experience, they are so talented, like yourself. They've so much experience, but something is stopping them amplifying that, like stepping forward into being a thought leader. And they're great in their zone of genius in four walls, but to grow and scale, they have to step out of those four walls, just like you did. And like from kind of your viewpoint, you know, how would you say, okay, come on now, you're ready to amplify your influence, and this is why, or this is how, or this is how I experienced it.
That is really scary from that instant. I mean, I find it really daunting. So like I said, I did not have a clue, but actually, I don't know why I was so daunted by it because it's been absolutely fine, and it was the best thing I ever did was just to put myself out there. But I would just say, literally, just be yourself, tell your story. Just say what you do and how you do it and why you love it, and just keep telling that story because that's what people want to know. They don't want to be sold something that's not real. They just, and when I put posts out, the majority of the time, the most feedback I get is when I'm just telling about myself and what I do. And that's what people want to hear. So literally just tell your story, be authentic, be real, and that's all that, all you need to do, and just be consistent. Just keep doing it, and then people will notice you. So don't be afraid because there's nothing to be afraid of. Like honestly, if I generally I smile when I think about it, when I think about when I first met you and I was like, I can't do this, can't do that. And honestly, if I wish we could go back when we recorded those first meetings and I could see what I was like then and where I was at then to where I'm at now, I just wouldn't believe the difference. And it hasn't even really been that long a time. And it's just, you just sometimes need somebody just to give you that little bit of a push and that confidence as well to say it's okay as well, and or even just say, just, because you used to say about just those few tips on what to do. You learn the styles as well.
Yeah, this is it, this is
But I
it.
would literally just say, just start off by just telling your story. And that's what.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, tell me, and tell everybody, how can people work with you? How can people work with you, Joe? What do they do? Do they reach out to an email, or do they connect with you on LinkedIn, or
Yes,
oh,
I'm on LinkedIn. My name's Jo Loly, Loly. Or they can find me on Calming Connections as well. That's my website, or joe at calmingconnections.co.uk. So yeah,
super.
reach out. I'm
Yeah,
happy
well,
to answer any more questions. Yeah.
amazing. We will put the details around this video and with the podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure that everybody who is watching or listening, depending on what your flavor is, will just be so inspired by your story. So definitely reach out to Jo to find out more because by God, does she have a story or two to tell, as she said. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.